Welcome to Grid Talk. My name is George Howson, and today we are here to preview the 2025 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Joining me today, we have Owain Medford.
Hello.
And Tom Horrocks.
Hi.
So after two quick races to start the second half of the season, we are back this weekend after a week of wait for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. A track that seems to deliver absolute bangers or some terrible clangers, to borrow a phrase from a popular F1 YouTuber there. Oh, Wayne, what are your thoughts about the Azerbaijan Grand Prix circuit, the Baku Street City circuit, and just tell us about your favourite memories here over the years?
Yeah, so I think it's generally a good track. Obviously, I think it's quite good in that it forces the teams to make a bit of a decision. Do you want to be first in the sort of the corners of the first and middle sectors, or do you want to be, do you want to prioritise that big straight? We've seen quite a lot of action. I think particularly, what was it, maybe 2019 or 18 as well, with the cars that we had then sort of, overtaking and then, almost getting repassed just because of the length of the straight and moving in and out of the toe. I think it just forces the teams to make a decision, which normally leads to interesting racing. Obviously, that there's quite a high risk of collisions, particularly on the first lap. And collisions with the barrier are also something that we do see quite a lot. Also, it's about the point in the season where the engines are starting letting go, so the safety car risk is really high, and I think that's what contributes to, a lot of the sort of peril of this race, what makes it so exciting. I think my favourite memories I think they've got to be sort of, the drama that's happened, particularly with the higher downforce cars we had from 2017, where it seems that a lot of cars were just sort of magnetised together. We had, Vettel obviously ramming into Lewis Hamilton and claiming he brake checked him, or obviously the infamous collision between Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen, which probably facilitated or helped, that breakdown in relationship and Ricciardo leaving the team. Those are the sort of things that jump into my mind when I think of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. You look at it on paper, and I must admit, you look at the track and you just think it doesn't look that great, really. It's a bit awkward. It's a bit tricky in places for sure, but it does produce some very eventful races. There is usually drama here. We had that last year, of course, as well, Tom. Literally right to the checkered flag. You didn't know how it was going to go. There were some excellent battles. Piastri and Charles Leclerc, I believe it was, battling for the lead last year as well. It's been on the calendar now since 2016, so it's a track that's been on here for quite some time, and it could potentially produce some more drama this year as well, with the title battle going the way it is.
Yeah, it is, as Owen said, it is a bit of a compromised track, and it is like, I'm not going to use the phrase that you put in our pre-podcast notes, but yeah, it is. I would say it's all right, not the word that you used, but yeah, it's let's say a very compromised track. It's on paper, you think, yeah, it's not going to be any good, but it is kind of like it's a jackpot or nothing kind of race. I think it does. If you were to run a track with robots around, run a race with robots around this track, it would be really, really dull. It needs that human element. It needs the ability to make a mistake. And I don't think the racing is incredible because of the type of circuit it is. 2.2 kilometers straight, though, means that if a car is set up for high speed, then you're going to get passing. If a car is set up for downforce, then you're going to have probably some passing because of those early right angle corners, which would then potentially lead to overtaking to turn three, turn four, turn three, I think maybe. So it's not an ideal circuit for great racing, but because of the proximity of the barriers, the high speed straights, the high speed nature, and the different types of areas of the track, it is normally something happens there. And it's just looking back to I remember watching the first race, the first F2, I think it may have been GP2 at the time, GP2 race in 2016 at the European Grand Prix in Baku, and just thinking, this is going to be insane. Like, people are actually going to die in the Formula One race in this race. And it was just mental. Everything, like every time there was safety car restart after safety car restart, crash, just craziness everywhere. And as a result, the F1 drivers were so cautious. It was one of the dullest races in history in 2016. The Azerbaijan Grand Prix has always been pretty good, but the European Grand Prix was terrible in Formula One stakes. So yeah, it's all right. It's all right. I don't think it'll ever be a classic venue and a track that people are going to love, but it's going to be a track that creates drama and good races. But yeah, it just needs that human element to actually make something happen. So if they're good, it's not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Max Verstappen had a dramatic puncture here as well. Even in qualifying, Charles Leclerc, his infamous "I am stupid" radio call that he did, that was Azerbaijan, and that was the castle section, which has got to be the narrowest section of any modern F1 track. Monaco somewhere might be tighter, but that's got to be the tightest bit of any modern Formula One circuit. And yeah, the whacking great long start finish straight. It's the and it might not be now. I think Las Vegas may have overtaken it, but either way, it's a very, very, very long flat out area there. So yeah, it's one that's definitely got the potential for drama for sure. And on that as well, drama in terms of the title race as well, Owain. Obviously, we've got Lando Norris really needing to get a victory this weekend, I think, to try and close that gap up between him and Oscar Piastri. I mean, he did finish ahead of Oscar Piastri at the Italian Grand Prix, but only second and third, so only 3 point swing. He needs a good result round here, but obviously it's a scene 12 months ago where A, Piastri won, and B, Lando Norris made a big error in qualifying, which cost him dearly.
Yeah, so obviously, I mean, you'd look at that sort of form and kind of say that probably Piastri has the advantage, and even if anything does go wrong, obviously just owing to that, to the engine failure that Norris had in Zandvoort. Yeah, it's one of those where he's now really on the back foot because obviously he's over a race win, an uncontested race win away from Oscar Piastri, and obviously that builds you quite a nice buffer if you are the leading driver there. So yeah, it needs to be a good weekend for Norris, and unfortunately we don't really have much form on him. He'll obviously be hoping to strike back, and very clearly he raced through the field very well that last year to come home in fourth. So obviously the car was very, very good at that point, but I think just given the ability he had to race through the field, and it shows that he should be able to at least do something well around here. Obviously, he made that mistake in qualifying, and I don't think that'll be hanging over his head at all. But yeah, he really needs to get some points on the board and keep building it up. Obviously, it's not ideal to just have that small swing, but you never know. These reliability problems tend to come in sort of waves. If one teammate if you're the teammate that gets them first, then they're usually the same batch or something like that. So Piastri might have it this time, and if Piastri is going to have a non-point scoring race owing to a reliability failure, it's probably going to be here. It is quite stressing on the engines in that way, and I think, to be honest with you, I think that's what Norris will be hoping for, just to try and bring that gap down very, very rapidly, because you don't want Piastri able to sort of manage his way through the rest of the season from here. So yeah, I think it's a vital race for Norris, and he needs to basically have a faultless weekend.
He does, and it's easy, much easier said than done around this track, of course. It's very, very tricky. It's very difficult. And as well, Tom, strangely, it is difficult to pass around here as well, as Charles Leclerc found out 12 months ago. If you just ace your marks, if you drive perfectly, which again is easier said than done, but Piastri's shown that you can do it across pretty much an entire Grand Prix distance here last year. Lando Norris really needs to do well in qualifying. He's really got to ace qualifying, because we've seen that Piastri, despite how long those straights are, which are pretty much back to back, it is difficult to pass around here.
It is, yeah, especially if you're in the same car as the person in front and they know what your setup is and you know what their setup is. It's going to be quite difficult there. I think they're in a similar situation with regards to engine, where I think Lando's engine was actually okay after the failure in Zandvoort. I think it was an oil leak, wasn't it, that caused the engine to shut down to avoid having a failure. So not technically an engine failure. So I think that engine is still, or that power unit is still in the pool and still able to be used. So that will be a huge sigh of relief to him if I am accurate in that statement, which I hope I am. In regards to the championship, he absolutely does need to be on top of Piastri, but I think it's going to be difficult this weekend. I think it's going to be a case of damage limitation, because Lando Norris has never finished on a podium here, apart from in F2, or yes, it was F2 at the time. And Oscar Piastri, he won here last year. It just seems to suit him more than Lando Norris. I think the only hope will be when we come to talk about the other teams, and if we're going to see a repeat of what we saw last week, and Ferrari very good out of 90-degree corners in the traction zones, very quick. So it's just going to be a case of can he be as close to Oscar as possible, capitalize on any opportunities that are presented to him, and then hope that there can be cars between him and Oscar. It's going to be difficult, but I don't think it's the be all and end all. I think if Oscar wins 2 more races this year without a failure, that's probably it for Lando. So he does need to stay on top of Piastri and stay as close to him as possible and take the opportunities when they're there. And he needs to be faultless as well, because he's guilty of having a few mistakes as well this year. As we've seen, Oscar's due a mistake, but he's a robot. So is he actually going to make a mistake? We don't know. that it's just the kind of thing. He just needs to make sure he's not making mistakes and that he is racing as quick as he can. Because let's be honest, like his pace has looked great against Oscar. It's been the mistakes that have cost him. The only mistake that Oscar's made all year was when the rain hit in Australia in his home Grand Prix. So he's just got to hope that happens again, because I think he is probably going to need a failure. On paper, he needs 4 points a race to catch him by the end of the season or race weekend. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility when there's a 7-point swing for first and second, but say two more race wins for Oscar with Lando second. And I'd say the gap's then too much because it's then out of Lando's hands. He needs help from somewhere else. So I think we need something to happen to Oscar for the championship to keep that intensity all the way to the end, if indeed we want a repeat of 2021. I'm not sure anyone does, but that's what we need this weekend, really, if that's for the Lando Norris fans anyway.
Well, yeah, that was very much a relationship between Hamilton and Verstappen that was a little bit more spicy, to say the least. I mean, I've said it so many times, this has been the friendliest championship battle in F1 history, particularly with two guys in the same team. It's almost like, how long can this last? Can they keep being like this? I think they can, to be honest, but we'll see. That can all turn around very quickly, obviously. And yeah, you would think that if there is going to be some kind of mechanical failure, it would probably be around this track. It is extremely quick. It's relatively bumpy by F1 standards as well. So we'll have to see what happens. But McLaren have been relatively bulletproof for such a long time. I mean, Oscar Piastri, as far as I could work out when I went through Wikipedia a few weeks back to check, he's only had one mechanical retirement in his McLaren career. And that was in his first race in 2023. He's gone 1.5 years. Oh, no, sorry, 2.5 years without having one at this point. It's been such a long time. But anything can happen in Formula One, and it usually does. And speaking a little bit outside of F1, we're getting a bit of endurance racing here for you, Wayne. Obviously, we had Max Verstappen making his Nürburgring debut this midweek. I mean, most people probably just want to chill out in the weekends off. No, Verstappen's going to the Green Hell for a nice Saturday drive. As far as I can tell, everything went all right with that. But how is he going to get on around Baku? Because we saw an absolutely stunning performance from him at Monza that I don't think anybody saw coming. Maybe he didn't even see coming. So can we see a repeat of that again?
Yeah, I think we can, to be honest. Verstappen, such a the market driver he is, 25 seconds ahead of cars in his same class at the Nürburgring, getting his Nürburgring license, and only 15 seconds down on people with 125 more horsepower, which is kind of ridiculous. Which is, similarly, he's got issues, obviously, with the Red Bull, where it's probably not the fastest car, but it seems that, as we saw in Monza, using sort of tweaks that, using a Dremel of all things to cut the rear downforce, and his ability to just manage the rear tires on that, because obviously that's gonna lower your rear end load. But it didn't seem to matter. Like he had the mark of everyone in Monza, and I think it's a similar ability. Just the car, sort of the car control he has, and the ability he has to make those tweaks, sort of manage having overall not the fastest package, but still be able to race that competitively, I think is going to be a benefit. And obviously it's not entirely the same. We've got many more low speed corners, and comparatively fewer high speed corners. Obviously there's the two chicanes at Monza, but it's all 90 degrees at Baku. The fastest corners we have on the circuit, right in the back end of the second sector. And I think that he can probably manage it. He's obviously excellent at car placement, so a decent qualifying, they get the setup in the window, which Red Bull very rarely don't, and I think he'll be able to either using maybe the same rear wing from Monza or perhaps a slightly fuller one, just to deal with the slight change in track sort of nature. And I think you can bet on never counting him out. So from that perspective, I think Verstappen is well in the mix. I don't personally think that he's going to get the win, but I think he's going to be right up there, and he's going to push the McLaren drivers right to the end on that one. That's my thinking for how his weekend is going to go.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you count him out at your absolute peril, really. He's always a factor pretty much, even when the car isn't there. He can pull off an incredible qualifying, like we've seen it so many times this year. We saw it at the sprint in Belgium. We saw it last weekend at Monza. We saw it at Suzuka. He has that ability to do that. And when he does, he's such a hard guy to get past. I mean, he's got nothing to play for. The championship is gone. You might as well try and have some fun and just make it awkward for the McLarens, And he didn't really make it awkward for the McLarens last time because they were nowhere near him, really. But anyway, guys, if you're enjoying this show, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star review for us on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. Also, if you're listening and you're currently not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do go over there and consider helping us out with a little subscribe, like, and all that good stuff as well. More information about exclusive content from Patreon at the end of the show. But let's talk about Hamilton now. Let's talk about Ferrari in general, really, because Charles Leclerc, despite never winning round here, which I had to double check just to be sure, but he's usually in the mix here. You know, he's had some pole positions here over the years, never quite worked out for him. He's usually very good around Baku. I remember he was part of a very good F2 or GP2 race. It might have even been that one that you were talking about earlier, Tom. I'm not too sure about that. But yeah, he's never won round here. Got close many times, of course. Hamilton, people saying that he's reinvigorated by the Tifosi at Monza. He was getting so much love and support from them. Ferrari, probably an outside shot for at least a podium. But what do you think about them coming into this weekend?
I think Lewis has made big strides over the last few weeks. I know he had a very difficult race in Italy because of his grid penalty, and a difficult race in Zandvoort. But I think the underlying pace is proven to be there. I think he's been there or thereabouts with Leclerc, probably about a 10th off overall, which is kind of like what we'd expect for a first year Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari. I know a lot of people had the expectation he was going to come in and blow Charles Leclerc out of the water. I think anyone thinking that was deluded, to be honest. So I do think he will. I think he will continue to improve, and I think he will have a better race. But I will caveat that I don't feel like the big result, the headline result, is coming this weekend without shenanigans. Because you look at it, yes, Charles Leclerc is often in the mix here, but he's had a lot of bad luck, and his worst finish here, apart from crashing, I think is P5, which is pretty good. In fact, I don't think he's even crashed in a race. I think that crash he had was in qualifying, wasn't it? So I'm pretty sure that P5 is his worst result around here. And 2017 in F2, or yes, it was F2. That was the first year as F2 because he was the first F2 champion. He had a P1 and a P2, which is pretty impressive for a feature in a sprint. So yeah, not that many podiums, but he's always been in the mix, and he's had a lot of bad luck. And he is, despite never winning it, he is a bit of a Baku specialist. Now let's look at the counter for Lewis Hamilton. Only won here once, and that was when Bottas got a puncher on the last lap. So not really a great circuit for him. Again, not a lot of podiums. He had a P2 in 2019, and he probably should have won in 2021, let's be honest, but Brake Magic had other ideas. But even then, he was still fighting Perez for the win. That wasn't nailed on. That was him in second place with a few laps to go. So it's not, and even then, that was only after a Max Verstappen tyre blowout. So it's definitely not a strong circuit for him. So anyone thinking that this is going to be the weekend that he gets that first podium, that first win for Ferrari, I don't think it's going to happen. I do, however, think that Ferrari, as you'll see when it comes to my predictions later on, will be in the mix. I think McLaren are going to be the overall fastest car, but I think the strengths of that Ferrari are going to put them in the mix this weekend. Maybe not to the same level they were in Monza, but you never know. Like Charles Leclerc around this track is magical, and he's just magical in qualifying anyway. So I think they're going to be there. I think they're probably going to be just ahead of Red Bull in the pecking order, with Mercedes probably a little bit off in P4. But there's definitely hope. You know, if there's something does go wrong, then Lewis could be the one that capitalizes. He could be the one that benefits from the late puncture, or maybe a late engine failure for some of these slightly tired engines, given that Baku is coming much later in the year than normal. So I would say on pure pace, it's not going to be the Lewis Hamilton return to the top step, but there's definitely a chance.
There's always a possibility. There is always a possibility. Baku is a relative lottery. It's an absolute nightmare to make predictions for, but we'll give it a go anyway later in the show. But yeah, Tom gave a little mention to Mercedes there, Owain. They seem to be going off the boil a little bit, just kind of coasting into 2026 at this point, in a sense. Russell's in and around the top 5, Mr. Consistency always being there. Antonelli finally got some points in his home race last time out for the Italian Grand Prix. He really desperately needed that. Of course, it was far from a straightforward weekend for him, and coming into Baku, like we say, it's a difficult track, particularly for the inexperienced drivers. I'm not overly confident, to be honest, for his sake coming into this one. But what do you think about Mercedes' hopes heading into the Azerbaijan Grand Prix?
To be honest with you, I'd like to be more optimistic about them, but I don't think I can. The form in Monza wasn't great. They weren't they were okay here last year. Obviously, Russell got that third place, but Hamilton was basically nowhere to be found. And as you say, it's a new track for Antonelli. I'm not sure if he's raced here before, but the thing about it is, it's a massive step up, and as a result, we normally see crashes from the rookies here. A lot of the most even the most talented drivers like Leclerc have been humbled here in qualifying. They make mistakes. It's a track that brings those out, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that from Antonelli. And I don't think the car performance is there. Do I think that Mercedes are off the boil in a way that they don't understand or don't sort of? I think it's a bit planned. I wouldn't be surprised if they've sort of chucked in the towel maybe a little bit here and decided to focus on 26 from this point onwards, because it has been a rather dramatic fall off, as you say. I think that it's going to be a tough weekend, to be honest, for Mercedes. Obviously, they want to extract the maximum for it, but to get the best out of it, I really do think that they would need to be pushing harder than I think they are going into next year. Where this is placed in the season, I think it's very clear that they're not prioritizing this year at this point. And again, I don't think that the car performance is particularly conducive to a good result around here. I mean, I think ultimately it's been a bit of a dud of a car, and they've extracted some decent performances out of it, but Mercedes haven't got their head around this rules package, and I don't think we're going to see a change from that and as in Azerbaijan.
Yeah, honestly, it is the ground effect here. These 4 years, they have not been. I mean, obviously, they've gone from being the most dominant team in history, well, one of at least in history in F1, to being a good team that can win the odd race here and there, get challenged for the podium pretty regularly. But, this is a far cry from what they've been used to. And it does seem as though the ground effects era has really not suited them, George Russell, I think, is absolutely driving out of his skin, but I think he's going to struggle really to get onto the podium, really, particularly with a specialist like Charles Leclerc around this track, with how good McLaren have been, with how good Max Verstappen is. It is very difficult for me to see a route onto the podium from him. And at this point with Antonelli, like you said, rookies do usually struggle around here. Even experienced drivers have really struggled around here in the past as well. So it's a very difficult track, and he's only raced here once in his career in F2 last year. That's it. And obviously F2 is very different to F1. So we'll see how Mercedes get on. I mean, they're not out of things by any means. They're not, they're kind of hanging on to the coattails of Ferrari for trying to challenge to get second in the constructors, but they need a big uptick in performance, really. They need a Las Vegas miracle like they had last year, really, to kind of catapult themselves up there. But we'll see how they get on. A team that have been missed, to say the very least, recently, Aston Martin, Tom, obviously an absolutely appalling weekend for them in Italy. They did seem to have some decent pace at the Dutch Grand Prix, and I've looked at the results for their two drivers here in the past. Aston Martin and Alonso in his Aston Martin days, he got a podium here in 2023. He was sixth, I think, here last year. Obviously helped by two drivers taking themselves out at the end of the race there, but still, compared to their results last year, that's pretty good. Stroll got a shock podium here in 2017, I want to say. So how are Aston Martin gonna get on this weekend? Is it going to be dream machines or a bit of a nightmare for them?
Well, I'm glad you said that, because according to my notes, I had that Alonso doesn't have a podium around here, so I must have made a mistake somewhere around there. I mean, I had him down as a P4 in 2023, but maybe I'm mistaken. Am I? Oh, okay.
No, you're right. You're right. I'm wrong. I can't read. I need to get some new glasses. He was fourth. He was nearly got a podium in 2023. Yeah.
So basically, what he needs to do is have a quick chat with Lance Stroll to find out what the secret of getting a podium at Baku is, because the more experienced driver are getting podiums in Baku. It was a P2 until right on the line, wasn't it? It was Bottas got him right on the line. That was that was in his first season, wasn't it? I think 2017 he got a podium here.
A springboard for his future success.
Yeah, yes, because I remember it was like the race after Canada. He'd got his first points finish in Canada and then got followed up with a podium, and everyone was saying, "See?" And of course, we've all been proven wrong over the last 10 years or 8 years or however long it is now. Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, I jest about Stroll being the stronger driver here. He is ahead in the championship, so take from that what you will. But it's obviously Alonso is going to be their trump card here. If they've got any hope at all, he's the kind of guy that will jump on. He will change the strategy at a whim. Who say, I've just seen on the big screen that this is happening, so we need to change our strategy to this and pull something magic out. And of course, it will be his greatest drive in the history of Formula One when he finishes in P16. So we all know that is a given. But Aston Martin have looked a little bit better. They are better in the high downforce situations. They have got better with the straight line efficiency, but they are still lagging behind in that area. Zandvoort was the perfect storm for them. So I imagine we'll probably be talking about Aston Martin in a better light for the next Grand Prix in Singapore. But this one, I think maybe if something crazy happens, then Alonso and Stroll might be able to strategize their way into a decent result. But I think they're probably looking at borderline Q1 exit at the moment. And, if they get into Q2, so they put themselves in the midfield with a chance to capitalize on something happening, then they have a chance of doing something decent. But I don't think it's going to be on pure pace. Again, with a lot of things this weekend, it's not going to be about pure pace. It's going to be about reacting to what happens. Haven't seen the weather report, but it doesn't normally rain in Azerbaijan. So I think we're probably going to be okay on that. But it is at a different time of year as well to what it normally is, as I said earlier. So climatic conditions, temperatures, all going to be different to what the teams are used to as well. So there's lots of unknowns for this weekend. So that might throw a surprise in there as well.
Yeah, I must stress that we're recording this on Sunday. So, as Brits, we know that the weather forecast can and will usually change. But as I'm looking at it now, it is meant to rain on Friday, but be dry the rest of the weekend. Low 20s, which by F1 standards is kind of cold, but it's not as cold as some of the races. I swear we raced here in April at some point and it was freezing by F1 standards and everybody just couldn't warm the tyres up. But I don't think that's going to be a problem this weekend coming up. But let's have a little chat about Williams just before we get into our predictions, because I don't really know how to rate them from Italy. I expected more from them. They usually do well around the high-speed tracks. Qualifying, they were relatively nowhere. Alex Albon, though, did a fantastic job during the race to get a solid points finish by the end, though. And that helped them for sure, Wayne, but they still feel like they need some better results to really be sure of that fifth place. Because, not long ago, we were saying, they're pretty much going to be set for fifth, no problem. But now they've got some threat from behind. So I think this is a key race for them to get points because they got a double points here last year.
Yeah, and you'd expect them to do well at this kind of track. I mean, as you say, they did well here last year, and it seems that the philosophy of the car, at least, has, over the past few years, has been that they have quite good aero efficiency once you take the downforce off the car. So that was sort of, it seemed like it would be nailed on that they'd be getting a double points finish or something much better than they achieved in Italy. I don't know whether they've sort of them making changes ahead of the coming year. But looking at the form, it's kind of weird. They didn't do so well in Saudi Arabia. I mean, an 8th and 9th, so it's still a points finish. Sorry, but I know that's a long time ago, but it's the only sort of comparable track we have, to be honest with you. Obviously, Sainz had a bad weekend, and Albon, did his best in Italy. So I don't really know where to rate them. I think operationally they'll be quite good, and maybe it was just a dud. I don't think, maybe I jinxed it by saying that they would go well around Monza, but I think they have the ability to do it. I think maybe, I don't know what happened in Monza, but I think going into Azerbaijan they'll be good around Baku, and as much as they've had, both drivers have had a little bit of a tough weekends around there. Yeah, I think it's going to be a positive for them, and I hope they get those points out because, as you say, it's only 24 points to Aston Martin behind them, and Aston Martin, are still getting a relatively decent set of points finishes, whereas Williams haven't had a double points finish in quite a while at this point. So, yeah, I really think that they need to get on it and have a good weekend if they can. Yeah, it might take a bit of shenanigans to achieve that, as Tom said regarding Ferrari, but yeah, I really do think that they can have a good weekend. I think it might need a little bit of help, but sometimes the luck just goes your way.
That's true. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And they're kind of queuing up a little bit behind Aston Martin, really. Just 7 points between Aston, Sauber, and the Racing Bulls. So, one of them teams has another miracle weekend like we saw from Racing Bulls at Dutch Grand Prix or Sauber at the British Grand Prix. It can happen. It can absolutely happen. So they need to get some more points on the board to be a bit more safe in that fifth position. But speaking of luck, time for predictions. Let's go for what we think is going to happen this weekend. Tom, I want to hear who you're going for pole, your top three, and of course, the bold prediction as well.
Yes, the fabled bold prediction. I never know what to do for that kind of thing. I always try and be more and more crazy. It tends to be recently that my predictions seem to be more bold than my bold predictions. So that's great. So as I alluded to earlier, I think Ferrari are going to be quick in qualifying. So I am actually going to go for a Charles Leclerc pole position because McLarens don't seem to be able to optimize in qualifying at the moment. And yes, they're quick if their car is a quarter of a second quicker than the field, they tend to be on pole by 0.2. So, or like by half a tenth for a few thousandths. It's never as straightforward. They don't seem to. There's something about that car. They can't seem to optimize it in qualifying. I do, however, think that they are still going to have the quicker car in the race. So I am going to go for an Oscar Piastri win with a Charles Leclerc in second place, which means, unfortunately, Lando, there's no space for you on the podium because I think that it's going to be Max Verstappen doing magical things. So I think it is probably going to end up a three-way fight for the win in the opening stages, with Lando losing out probably in leaving, probably getting a better start than Piastri and getting alongside and then being a bit too cautious into turn one and then dropping 5 positions, something like that. So that's my podium prediction there. I think it's going to be Leclerc and Verstappen fighting out for that second place come the end. Now, for a bold prediction, I don't know what to do for this. I think I'm going to say, because I didn't get to talk about them, a good weekend for Williams. I think it's going to be a double points finish because you can't tell me Aston Martin have got a better driver lineup than Williams. So I'm gonna go that Sainz is buoyed by his amazing turnaround from the steward's inquiry, where he doesn't get his race time back, but he gets the points taken off his license, and then that's gonna buoy him into having a much better race. And just as a side one, an additional one, just to throw it in as a bit of a cherry on top, Oliver Behrman gets a race ban just for craziness.
Wow, I didn't expect that there at the end. I mean, that is certainly. Jesus, what the hell does Behrman do to get a race ban?
He's 2 points away.
Is he? Oh, yeah, he is close, isn't he? Oh, you know what?
And as I said in the review, he seemed to have got those points. Seemed to have got those points for daring to be overtaken and defend it in Italy. Like,
oh man! So the guy that came in to replace Magnussen when he got a race ban
in Baku.
Gets a race ban in Baku. You know what? Honestly, I really hope it doesn't happen because I like Ollie, but that would be quite funny.
All I'm saying is the WEC isn't racing where currently Magnussen races. I don't know if he races. I don't know if he races in IMSA. I can't remember. But
he is the reserve driver.
Yeah.
Just bring him back in.
It would be K-Mag back for the Singapore Grand Prix. All bets are off there.
Okay, take it. I'm going to my prediction.
Your turn, Owain. Try and top that, mate.
I can't top that, so I won't. But I am going to go with pole for Verstappen. I think that's relatively likely. I think Piastri is going to win overall, though. I think the tyre wear, given that it's a street track, it's not overly high tyre wear, but it's not nothing. And we did see that, like, with relatively low tyre deg at tyre wear in Italy, the blistering on Verstappen's tyres was ridiculous. So yeah, I think he's going to lose out in the race. Piastri is going to take the win. Verstappen is going to be second, and then Norris is going to be third. And just to contradict myself, I'm going to go with a Ferrari win. I don't know who, I just think it will be Ferrari.
Owain edging his bets. We're getting all of it in this time. We're getting the endurance racing in, edging his bets. Honestly, this is peak cinema. This, but yeah, I mean, I'm going to be going against both of you somehow. I'm going for a McLaren pole for mine. I'm going to go for... I think he's going to do it. I'm going to go for Piastri to get pole. I'm going to go full house with Piastri for the win. All three of us on that one. I'm going to be boring. I've got to near the top of the predictions lead by being boring, so I'll keep doing it. I'll put Lando Norris in second. And third, let's go Charles Leclerc. He's always in and around the podium. So it's definitely possible. Bold prediction. I don't think there's any chance it's happening, but he did get his first F1 points here 12 months ago. Franco Colapinto in the points, top 10, best Argentine driver in Formula 1 of the 21st century, getting his first points for Alpine. It's happening this weekend. But anyway, for more questionable predictions, for more and everything like that, I'll give you guys the chance to plug your outlets. Tom, where can we hear and see more from you?
Well, I'm glad you put 21st century in that statement, because I was about to just rain down on you.
He's just a bit better than Gaston Mazzacane from back in the early 2000s. I'm not putting him up there with Fangio and Reutemann, not quite yet.
I thought that's where you were going for that. I was like, wow, that's taking fandom to a whole new level there. Right. Yeah, so Monkey Seat, we do occasionally do podcasts. We've had podcasts planned after the last 2 Grand Prix, and then I've had quoting but removing the obscenities, the message 10 minutes before we're due to start. Sorry, man, can't make it. effing David Baddiel doing my head in. So if you get name drops like that, if you want stuff like that, then come and see Monkey Seat. Me and Carl, we do occasionally podcast, but we are desperate to do one after this one. So we just decided that if we don't get on by Wednesday, there's no point doing it because everyone's moved on by then. So yeah, look out for us wherever you get podcasts. Monkey Seat Podcast. Me and Carl. Grid Talk's dirty cousin.
Very well said. Owain, socials for Grid Talk?
Before I get into the socials, I'm just going to say I was wrong. It wouldn't obviously be a race ban for Baku. It would be a race ban for Singapore. So K-Man can do it. K-Man can step in. I've checked the dates. He's got on the calendar on that one. And if you would like to see sort of reaction to that, then you'll have to see that probably on the socials because it won't be during the podcast. Yeah. So if you want to see what we're, the results of the prediction league and all things Grid Talk when we're not podcasting, then come and find us at Grid Talk UK on all the social media platforms with the app. That's where we have all of our clips. That's where we have the prediction league that I'm doing so terribly in. I need this to come off. I need the full 10 points from this weekend to, much like Lando Norris, I need all those points to even make a challenge for the title at this point. And you can find that at Grid Talk UK on all the social media platforms with the app.
Very well said. Yeah, I don't think anybody's got any. I think the highest someone's got is about 8 so far this season. It's very difficult. Louis does make it tough, just like Grill the Grid Talk at the start of the year. Of course, go on, Tom. I can tell you angling to say something there.
No, I was just going to say I think he got 8 points last time out, Louis. I think that was the best one. But yeah, he got the whole podium right, and he got like pole position and someone's starting position or something. I can't remember what it was now, but yeah, he did do very, very well, and he's put him back into the conversation. I'm desperate pushing up to that top 3. I just want to break into the top 3, and I figure if I lose the faith in Lando, I might get into the top 3. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
We'll see how that all evolves. If you want to see more from me, you can head over to our website, f1chronicle.com. Also F1 Chronicle as well on MSN, and we're Formula Reports on all the socials, including YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, probably a few others I'm forgetting right now. So yeah, if you want to hear some more opinions about F1, you can go to there. But if you want to see some more from Grid Talk, you will also find us on YouTube as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal and Pocket Cast. Just search for F1 Grid Talk for our big back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to the race results. Thank you to Jared Bradley and Holly Eagle for supporting us on Patreon. If you want to support the show some more, then why not sign up for our Patreon for exclusive content, including our Beyond the Grid Talk podcast, which we may be recording one very soon as well for you guys. Also, make sure you subscribe so you're one of the first to know when our new Wheelie episode goes live. And also, we'll be back with plenty more F1 content reacting to the Azerbaijan Grand Prix at the weekend. Thank you very much for listening to the Grid Talk podcast, and goodbye.